With me today, I have Mr. Ryan McKay. And today we're here to talk a little bit about Azure storage permissions. So, as promised, we're back with a vengeance, and we're going to be bringing in some regular kind of drops of knowledge for things here. So, Ryan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome today, Andrew. How's it going with you?
I am fantastic. It's really good. It's actually just a real pleasure to chat with you today. Here, as you know, in our home province of Alberta land, we have a little bit of a Mother's Day kind of weather twist, as is often the case here.
Typically found during the May long weekend here in Alberta, but because things are special for Mother's Day, it's come early.
Yes, absolutely. So we've kind of carved out a few minutes to make sure that we do a bit of a recording. So today we kind of talked about this a little bit, and we just wanted to do a little tidbit about Azure storage and some of the permissions, both from an RBAC perspective, but also from the perspective of accessing content, kind of like SAS keys and things like that. So we're actually just going to kind of drive through a little bit of the graphical version of this, and we're not going to dwell a whole lot on kind of the typical stuff. Usually I like jump into CLI pretty fast because it's just so much easier for me. But nonetheless, we are here and we're going to do the graphical. So today we're just going to kind of go through creating a bit of a storage account. So we'll just call this like, if I'm able to type today, that would be awesome as well. So we'll just call it store test 733 or something like that.
Exactly. And, for the purposes of this demo, we're not really worried about naming conventions. Obviously, in production environments, you want to come up with a great naming convention that's consistent and followed.
Right. And right out of the gate, I just want to kind of provide the typical example. My first problem I always have with storage accounts is the naming is so restrictive. That said, the problem we have here is I've inadvertently capitalized letter T. So it's all lowercase characters and numbers only. And you also have a limit, I think, of 24 characters in total.
And I find Microsoft is pretty particular with the capitals and special characters and naming conventions all throughout the M365 stack, for that matter.
Yeah, absolutely they are. And I also just noticed that they've updated their drop down here for region groups. So it's organized a little bit differently.
Nice. See, yeah. Go away from it for a couple of days and some change. That's what makes this job fun.
Right. I know. It's always when you're doing a recording or a client demo.
Yeah, that too.
So I'm a big fan of the premium storage now. And last week, of course, for certain types of VMs, Ultra Storage was announced by Microsoft. When Premium just isn't good enough, you get Ultra. Although I would encourage everybody to go and just quick check that blog post or the storage page, because yes, the international sign for Pay Me Now definitely applies. You will need to make a deposit with like an Amex corporate card or something.
Yeah, I was waiting for it. I was on a project about a year and a half ago, and we had some massive performance issues. And one of the things that was proposed was Ultra Storage, but unfortunately, it wasn't available in the region that we were using. But it would have made things a little bit better. But we were able to solve it another way.
Yeah, so there's some different creative ways that we can kind of approach storage when it comes time in production, for sure. So one of the things I really like to do is I like to enable infrastructure encryption, and that just means that on the Azure side that your data is encrypted. So it's important to note that if you don't check this option, your data is not default encrypted. So if you have compliance requirements, things like that, that's really kind of a good stop to make sure that you think about that one. And certainly public blob access, if you're not using a private endpoint to access your information on your Azure subnet, then you probably want to have public access enabled, and then use NSGs or network security groups to restrict access and kind of lock down which IPs, for example, your on-prem external IP across your VPN or express route DMARC IP would be good ones to add in that case. Minimum TLS version, that's also kind of an important one. 1.0, I hope it's only here for compatibility reasons. It really shouldn't be used, definitely not in production in any way. It is not secure.
No.
I think even we could probably find a way to bypass that with a little bit of light Bing searching, of course, right? And then 1.1, I think it's still acceptable, but it's not the preferred. It is being deprecated in the near future. I can't remember the date off the top of my head for Azure deprecation for that, but 1.2 definitely would be the preferred encryption method.
Definitely.
Blob storage. How do you feel about blob storage?
I like blob storage.
Man of many words.
It stores stuff. It makes me happy.
Yeah, it is actually a good one. I like to use tiering for kind of archiving older stuff. One of the interesting things is I was working with a client recently, and they have many petabytes of data in their environment. And they actually, their storage team did an analysis kind of at the end of last year, beginning of this year. And it was something like 83% of their data had not been accessed for over 5 years.
Yep.
So it just goes to show we have to kind of do frequent, fairly frequent, I won't maybe say, kind of reviews like that, and just kind of keep on top of it, because especially as we move all of that data into cloud, there is cost attached to it by the data size. So if we can cold tier data that we have to keep for retention reasons, but we don't have to have it in like fast access. Like a good indicator is if nobody's opened one of those files for 5 years, it's probably not going to happen tomorrow morning. Of course, Mr. Murphy will rear his ugly head for us on occasion with that. But I mean, really, the long story short here is cold tier the data when possible. Find out what that magic number is for your organization or your needs in this case, and try and just reduce that overall cost.
And to that point as well, Andrew, as our technology that we work with has evolved, the role that we have as administrators and architects has evolved to one where we are responsible for putting solutions in that are cost effective. And this is one of the ways that we can architect solutions that are cost effective for our clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of one of the things we want to be careful of is, remember at the start we chose premium. So hot and cold tiering is going to be kind of pointless in this case, but we're not going to be doing large file shares because we chose the premium option, and we only have locally redundant available. So there's a few different reasons along the way, but we won't be doing Azure files with this. Tables and queues, chances are if you're using premium storage, you're probably using table or queue data, simply because it's going to be transactional processing, and that's typically what's going to require a much faster throughput to enable things like, if you think about like cell phones as endpoints with apps, sending data back for something to a server. Usually that's queued or tabled data. Kind of blobs is more like large files, think like PDFs, CAD files, things like that, right?
Just files, yeah.
Yeah,
blobs.
Just general files.
Yeah.
So here we kind of get to that point we talked about a little bit, which is the networking. So we can do the private endpoint, which is definitely preferred. And if we're going to add the private endpoint, we need to select the VNet and the subnet that it's going to live on. And typically we like to create a subnet to put all of our different endpoints on and kind of keep them in one space, and then we can provision access to that subnet based on app needs. In our case, we're going to be lazy, and we're going to do just public access all networks. And instead of selected networks, because then we could choose what we want to specifically specify that has access to that endpoint. But instead, we'll just do a public endpoint, which is the default, and we'll use Microsoft routing. So data protection, soft delete, retain deleted blobs for 7 days. That's kind of a good one. Typically, that's going to be like 30 days for most organizations. In our case, it doesn't matter a whole heap. Tags, definitely want to encourage tagging. That way you know who to contact for this storage account, what department or division or application owns this data, and of course, who is responsible for the bill at the end of the month. All of those good things we can put in there. We are fortunately going to skip that, and we're going to kind of jump here and say, let's just create our storage account.
I feel so naughty creating something in Azure without a tag.
I know, and with wide open security provisioned on it, it's kind of almost gross, right?
I think yeah. Don't judge.
Yeah, it's only for demo purposes.
For
folks.
demo purposes.
Feel free to leave your comments on the YouTube channel or on Twitter or LinkedIn and let us know. Are you using default storage options in production? If you are, yeah, ask for help. We'll help you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is kind of nice because now I'm going to kind of put the ball in your court a little bit, and I'm just going to be the mouse man here. Maybe tell us a little bit about some RBAC on here, right?
Right. So as is the case with all Azure services, the security is governed by the Azure Role-Based Access Control, or RBAC. You are not granted permissions to these resources by default. You need to grant yourself permission to these resources. And luckily for all of us, Microsoft has been gracious enough to create some Azure built-in roles for authorizing access to blob and queue data. So you can utilize those out of the box. They will probably address 99.9% of your needs. In the event that you have some very specific needs, obviously you can create your own RBAC roles as needed. But generally speaking, I find it very rare that I ever have to go in there and create anything specific. Once that's done, you determine sort of the scope of where the role is going to be applied, and you apply it to your storage account or any other object for that matter, and you carry on. And that's how you secure your data properly, secure your access to your data properly, above and beyond some of the other capabilities that Andrew suggested a few moments ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so RBAC or role-based access is really kind of it's very much the bee's knees. Really, it's a lofty goal for some organizations that didn't do a big push to get there. But then again, that is a good way to describe it. You do have to do a bit of a push to get into RBAC if you're not there today. But you have to start somewhere, and you have to start sometime. And as you're provisioning cloud resources, is actually a really good time to do it because it'll help you and your teams to understand how RBAC really works. And like Ryan was saying, a lot of the built-in roles for our Azure Active Directory are super intuitive. And when Microsoft does make updates to the roles for different access, certainly they update us about it. They post on their blog and make a release and all those good things. But it also updates inside those roles. So if they find that best practice has been adapted for updated usage, if something needs to be removed because it has changed for whatever reason, or the product or service has been evolving and it warrants a change with the RBAC, then all those things get updated by Microsoft, and we don't we don't have to do any clicking to make that work.
Absolutely.
So it's really quite nice.
A lot of the thought is done at the beginning. As I said earlier, if you have a good name, those are things that you can follow. If you have good tagging standards, those are things you can follow. And again, that goes to your use of RBAC permissions. If you do that at the beginning, it's really easy to flow that down to other resources as you go down your Azure journey, if you will. And also, if you need to retrofit them, you can retrofit into an existing environment as well. The RBAC roles can be applied as subscription, object-based, user-based. They're very, very flexible, and it's really easy to get that set up and sort of that standard set in your Azure tenant and move forward with it.
Yep, absolutely. And we can kind of see in the on the screen here that it's pretty simple to grant access, right? So a lot of the owner, contributor, and reader, they're going to have those accesses already. Different roles might, maybe the monitoring team needs to have access to the storage account that is holding some log files for them, things like that, right? So we can kind of make tweaks and add those role-based permissions, and we actually just choose it, and we choose next, and we just choose a few options. We can even add different members in here, and it's like super straightforward. So now that said, in that tenant, I know I don't have the license for it, so if I go to apply that, it's going to fail in that case. But it's very easy to do that, and it'll work just beautifully. So that said, I think that kind of covers off the basics, very much the basics for kind of provisioning a storage account, taking a look at RBAC, and taking a look at how you can access that data. Am I overlooking anything here?
I don't think so at all. It covers what we wanted to, just basic permissions, but really the importance of starting out with the basics and understanding the basics, and then being able to apply those to the grander scheme of your Azure tenant. And that's always the best. Is sometimes you go down a few levels at the very basic level so that you can build that knowledge out and be able to apply it at the sort of the macro higher levels.
Absolutely,
so I think we got it covered.
Yeah, we have to have the foundations in place before we can kind of get excited about all the little fun stuff that we like to overlay. So, Mr. McKay, tell me, where can I find you at the end of the day here?
Sure. My blog is at www.mscqf.com. Twitter is @MSCQF. And then on the other medias, whether that be YouTube, SoundCloud, or LinkedIn, I can be found at Microsoft Cloud Quick Fix. And yourself, Andrew?
Definitely on all of the media things with @AzureTracks, and certainly on the blog at AzureTracks.com. So pop on over. Hopefully, if you're listening or you're watching this, you're having a little bit of fun with us as we click through here. It was good. We kind of avoided getting out into left field today, but just in case, happy belated Mother's Day to anybody who qualifies for such a wonderful day. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.